Hi everyone, welcome back to the studio. We're going to continue on with some of this painting now, and I'm just going to get right into it, okay? So what I did was I came back in here this morning, and actually it was late last night and a little bit this morning, but I came in and started to add some of these rocks. I wanted to work out how I was going to do these rocks. So, and what's very important about the technique is whatever technique I use for him in here, I want to make sure that I match that. So I put some more light color that was in here, and then and I filmed a little bit of it. What I did was I started to set up some various colors and stuff into the rocks with my palette knife, with my painting knife. And those are burnt siennas and blues, and there's some of the Naphthol Red Light and some of the blue, burnt siennas and greens, some yellows, some whites, getting some of the different tones in there. And again, you know, when you look at a rock has at least three planes. It has a light struck plane, a receding plane, and then a shadow plane. So that's basically what you're doing, is you're putting on light planes, receding planes, shadow planes. Light's coming in from this direction here, hitting most of it. I changed the rocks, like I said, about at least a dozen times over the course of an hour as I was working on them, trying to figure. And what I was doing was my original rocks followed right along the shoreline. And I've noticed I had a problem, and I thought I'd share this with you. Is that, you know, my original scape in here was, okay, I'm going to put this little lake, right, or a little pond, a small lake right here. And my line was too straight. My rocks were too straight. And so I brought a little rock right out into the water. And then what I do is I take some of that color, just a little bit darker and stuff, and I express it down here. And just like I showed you, I pulled a big brush, just like I blurred this on him. I pulled a big brush and just pulled down. You can use a little extender in there so you have some longer working time, okay? So that's what I did. But I ended up changing it, dropping this rock into here, and I want to change it up into here, bringing some of that water in a little closer right into here, right along that edge, because I feel that it's too much of a straight line. I might put another smaller rock right out here in the water, reflecting down to break that line. Does that make sense? It was just too much of a line in the pattern. Now, so I like the undulation of the line into the mountains and everything, and so it was just a little bit too much of a line. So, and then I just took a little bit more of my yellow, little burnt sienna and white, and just added some more paint. I filled in and just added some more paint. I like to get rid of some of that canvas weave and get some nice thick paint in there. And that just, and when you get that thicker paint in here, that's going to make doing the actual reflection a lot easier, okay? So first, so I did a lot of changing in it and stuff, and I filmed a lot of it. I filmed the entire thing, and I just showed you a couple of clips, but I want to repaint these rocks in here so you'll know exactly what I did over here, and of course I'll paint some of these rocks in there so you're going to see everything, okay? All right, so let's come back in here, and I'm going to take a little burnt sienna. I'm going to use a 3/4 inch brush, a little burnt sienna, and a little bit of the blue here, make this slightly darker, and I want to redo my line, my water's edge right here for a minute. And I want to maybe travel it up here a bit, you know, and then just take this back down here. So the water undulates a little bit more. Does that make sense? I don't want it to be a straight line. I want the water to kind of, so this can be right there, right like that. And then maybe it comes back out. Maybe this rock, maybe it does, this doesn't. I'll change this so that the water comes out a little bit more straight over here. That might be better. And let's take some of that light color. So I'll just leave that dirty color in my brush. Let's take some of the yellow and a little bit of burnt sienna and a little bit of white here. And let's just come right in. This is a color very close to that. So we'll push that in. I might, you know, paint some more rock. Little rocks, you know, little pebble stones, little ones, right up against that edge there. And so I'm going to add some extender so this slides a bit. And so what I'm looking for is right now is just kind of compositional changes here. And you know, as I started to put some of him in there, I liked it, but you know, I added another coat of white down in here into the horse, and I really liked it. Build up his chin area here on Quasar a bit. But really, I added a lot of tech. I just took a big brush and went zoom with the texture right down, and that looked really good. I thought my saddle was a little bit high, so I painted up the saddle a bit and thinned him out just a touch more. But so that's all I've really done, other than putting some more, you know, some more paint onto the surface. And this is the thing, is I want to get some paint, because the more paint we have, the more the weave fills in, and the more depth it takes. So you look at him, see, we've painted him a couple of times. Look at how he's jumping off the surface. Look at how the horse is jumping off the surface, because they've been painted quite a bit. Look how these rocks jump off the surface compared to those. Paint, the amount of, and I answered this question a lot of times, paint. The amount of paint that you use is so important to a painting. And if you're a beginning artist or something, we tend to paint very thin. Does that make sense? So get some paint out there. All right. Now, so that was my 3/4 inch brush. I'll go down to my the brush that I used here on my rocks, an 8 or a 10, more than anything else. And the knife, because you use the knife. Let's go in and let's paint some of this. Now, what I started to add into these rocks also was some of the dark colors from here. And again, that's that harmony, carrying that brown through the painting. I got my rocks a little bit too much bluish gray, and they, you know, and I like these colors into the rocks, but I also needed these colors here, which, you know, so I'm going to add some of that right away this morning. Some of the burnt sienna and blue. You can add a little open medium to some of this so it stays wet for a little bit. Let's look for some of our deep shadows. Don't take out everything we did before. Just kind of push some of that around. Let's put some of that right down in here. Not tons of it, but we'll push that right in here. Okay, and you can see immediately how it pulls the colors of the cowboy, see? Now, let's put some of this right into the angle. And again, we'll take some of this right down into the water. Now, what you can do is put a light coat of extender over the surface too. You've seen me do that in other paintings, and that works really well. And so that's up to you. But let's go a little bit more blue and some white up into the halftone range. And we had this other bluer gray, so let's put on some of this warmer brownish gray here into this rock. Okay, and we'll push some of that right here into our reflection as well. Okay, let's add some of that right over here. And then right in here. Right, I didn't add that real dark right in there into that water, into that edge there. We'll put the water's edge right along that rock as well. But right where that rock is, you know, really dark right against the water, let's get a little more blue into it so it's really dark. Maybe a bit of it right in there. The kind of undulation to a rock where you have all these little rock crevices and stuff, that is really adds a lot to a rock here. Now, with anything, you can always take your big soft brush when you're done and just pull down. You see, and that pulling down blurs it down. See how it blurs it down? And then you can just real quickly soften it out across, and you get a nice, it's a real quick, nice kind of a blur to it. That's what I want, a blur. The blur means I don't do it so many times, and like I've warned you, don't do it so many times that you blend it. You blur it, okay? Just once, maybe twice, just blur it. Don't blend it. Let's put some of this right up here onto the top. Some of it, leave some of that other light that we did, some of that nice color of that rock. Let's take some of this right down into here. Right down this edge of this rock. That's kind of neat. And give it a little bit more of an edge. this rock is maybe another, let's put another little stone of it right out there too. So it's like two little pieces of it there. And let's warm this, a little bit of this lighter yellow, warm here. And oops, one of the things I got to do is take some of that right out into here. Remember, they form V's. So let's just take some of this down. And you can just pull some of this down. As you get further away, your whole shapes get blurrier. Does that make sense? So I don't need that much. Let's just push some of this. And in a lot of cases, you know, unless you're doing an absolute mirrored reflection, you don't need that much. Now, let's work on this. Let's get this just a touch bluer, maybe a bit of red into this. And one of the things I do like to add as I'm getting, you know, the grays and stuff there, every once in a while is a little yellow. That makes it, see the difference in the rock colors here. So these are all really good rock colors. And, you know, little marks. Now, what I did when I started these all over here is I just pick up this, and I love this. See, I just drag it over the surface, and see what it does is it breaks up, just like this. Just drag it over. See that light dragging over it, breaks up and adds, it adds a lot of this little fracturing and stuff, which I really like. But my cowboy was very much brush painted, and so he looked a little different from the rock, which is okay, but I wanted to bring the cowboy and the rock a little closer together. So in the end, I ended up doing a lot of the rock with my brush. But I love this drag. See this? It just breaks up that area of the rock and adds this fracturing, which is quite nice. But let's just soften some of that out. So I can just pull and soften some of that out there and get some of that highlight that's there on that rock, and go back and revisit like some of your browns and blues there. Take some of that there into that rock. Okay, just a mark of it there. And maybe let's make this more of a slope. So he's sitting on more of a slope here, there, like that. And maybe not quite so perfect of a seat here. Let's give it a few little undulations there. And some lighter color, a little bit of yellow with that lighter color. Let's reset. So a lot of times when I'm coming in too, I'll paint with the flat of the brush, drag it down, round it slightly if your rock is really round, okay? Up to you and your rock. I also use burnt sienna and green. I love that color as well. Beautiful tone. And so it just helps, you know, it just helps your rock. You know, it's whatever you want to, but that burnt sienna and green, nice intermediate tone here. And I can use that here on this rock. Let's put a little bit in here, darken that down just a bit. And see, I'll use my brush in different ways to kind of push that rock in there, okay? And maybe a touch of it over here, not too much. You know, it's just kind of lost over there. I think the point here just makes it look too much like a perfect seat. So I'm going to take that out. And this is all stuff I'm constantly looking at, changing my design. So it looks a little bit too much perfect here. So let's just maybe angle this rock a bit more here. We'll take a little bit lighter, a little more yellow. And all of this other ground, see, all of this other ground here, I'll paint over and change and add grasses and ground to it and stuff. So, you know, it will change. It will change. Now, let's get some of this shadowy dark right out here, and then just let this maybe fall down and then come out again and fall down. That's better. And a little bit of that shadowy tone right there on him. There, that's not so bad. And maybe a little light edge right here. I like to, every once in a while, put a cut edge or something, a little bit more of a sharper relief. And then let's go back to some blue and burnt sienna as a deeper shadow. So this is how I work the rocks here, right there like that. And let's just take a little bit of that blue and shadow here and maybe hit more of a cut edge, maybe right here. And you see that just jagged, makes your rock a little bit more jagged looking to have some of those other tones in there. And it works. Let's put in a bit more light so this will come right off of that edge. Sometimes I'll take the dark and stuff and put in little cracks and crack relief. You can just tap some of this around too, like a little bit of light hits a edge of the rock there. That works. Maybe a touch more highlight right up here on this flat surface, because that would pick up some light because of the angle of our light. And then I always like to, basically with the rock, what I do is do a lot of almost like sketching towards the end with my darks to set up some more planes or more shadowy interest or something like that on the side. So I come back with darker colors and stuff like that a little bit towards the end. I like to almost like sketch the rock. So, push in, and I love this bit of the burnt sienna showing up there. That's kind of nice. So let's put in a little bit more of that. I did that in a few areas, like right up and through here and stuff, just a touch of that burnt sienna that just, this says, ooh, that's a different color. And you can soften it out a little gray. Just lightly take your brush over it and let the canvas weave kind of pick some of it off. And that works pretty nice there. So we got some interest there on that. Now, here, I like everything that's here, but it's just like too much of a seat on him. So I'm going to take some burnt sienna and some dark and round that just a bit more. So his leg is not quite as a perfect seat, if that makes sense. Maybe a little bit of blue and violet and burnt sienna or a bit of red, just a real nice dark color here. Even a slightly different tone, and just kind of, so see that just kind of, it rounds it down a much. It's not so much of an angle. And that's stuff that I pick up as I get further along the painting. When I'm starting out a painting, I don't worry about all of the little stuff. I realize that as I bring it into focus, I'm going to correct some of these things that I see. And hopefully I see it all before we go to varnish. But I always tell my students, and I've said it in several videos here, it's like I start out like if you look through the old, cameras, you turn the lens here to focus it. And so I start it slightly blurry and start to bring it into focus. And what I do is I'm bringing in more of those edges and correcting a few things here and there. And that makes it a little better, I think. I'm going to take a stroke of just some burnt sienna right here like this and just break that edge. That looks pretty nice. Let's go a little burnt sienna and light, some yellows, a little bit of burnt sienna into that, right in there. Take that back here like that. That looks better. See how it's a more natural flow down, not that angled bit on his backside there. I put just the idea of the fetlock there on the horse, and maybe you would pick up just a bit of his hoof there. So I'll just put a little dark in there. So I start to there, and I put just a mark for the hooves and stuff right there. But see how that just flows down a little bit more naturally. And it gives you more room. Like if I wanted to take some yellow, let's take some yellow, some of our yellows, burnt siennas, some of this, maybe take this light and almost like a fold line there in his chaps, and see all of that beautiful coloring there. You know, that just adds more interest to it. I like that. And maybe a bit of that comes back up over here as it's coming out of the shadow. So we're going to have a cast shadow right down here. It would be a cast shadow. The cast shadows, I do more of a violet color. So some blue, some violet. Sometimes I'll destroy that out with a little bit of red and green or burnt sienna. And I'm going to add a little extender so it's not quite so dark and heavy. And I'm just going to start to whisper that in here. Right up like that. This is a cast shadow from his leg and that rock in there. So that's something that we have to start adding. And right now, I'm getting to the point in the painting that I can add some of that interest in there if I want to right now. And let's drop in a bit of it right in here, just to say we did it. A bit of it right against the edge of his chaps there. Okay, so most of it would be over onto this side. But the dog here will pick up right up underneath as the contact. And then the cast would stay pretty tight right up here. Right up about like that. Right out. So that was maybe go out a little bit more. You know, how far out it extends depends on the angle of your sun, right? Where that sun is. So now back up through here, we'll put some to help soften that out. We'll put some of the nice grasses and stuff on top of that. Let's put a bit of the dark, bit of that purpley color. Carry it. Add a few little marks there to that rock. Okay, that's a very interesting rock. Carry it down into the water a bit. Okay, down like that. Okay. Now, against the water's edge. Now, see, most of the time here, we're going to paint the reflections and stuff in a minute. As soon as I got to get another coat onto the dog. Oh, we got to finish our rock. Don't let me forget the rock. Got to finish our rock. So let's get back with some lights, some burnt sienna, some yellows, a little bit of blue, which helps it go gray. And we'll start some of the light colors across here. And I like to just kind of scumble my brush a bit or use the knife. You see me use the knife as well. And I don't want to destroy everything that I've already done on the rock. Let's go with a little bit more lighter blue. Here. Here. Maybe give this another little bump out right there. Just to change that shape of that rock. Sometimes my lines, you know, when I get in there are too straight, too perfect. That's my left brain. And I have a problem with that. And I realize I have a problem with that. I have a problem with that. I'm a left brain. I'm a chemist. And I fought it all my life. As a matter of fact, my friend and I were painting last night. And I was just like, God, I can't believe I added that to the rock. And I said, I just made another straight line. And I know better than that, but I did that. And he's a left brain too, so he identified with it. So we'll take a little bit of this purpley violet, a little mark right in there, change some of that up, give some nice angles. If it's too purpley violet, add a little red and green to it, and just add a couple more marks. Here, little touches. Look for the little halftones, little breaks or interests in your rock there, right? Let's add some warmer tone in there. A little bit of warmer tone into that side here. Try not to leave too much brush marks. Scumbling and stuff like that is much better. Let's go touch warmer right here. That's good. See, I've just built it up. We'll round this down a bit. Take that rock there over the edge. That's not too bad because it doesn't take away from him. Let's put some of that light that we did right there onto this one here. Scumble it. Just scumbling is just light application of your brush here, you know, and it just, that looks pretty good. But let's take a little violety color, a little more shadow, shape that up a bit. So rock you can paint many times. Let's get this darker color back here and kind of shape up maybe one or two little rocks right there. Okay, so we'll put the shadow on it. We'll put a little light on it. With the smaller rocks, you can just do light and shadow. You don't always need that third receding plane. I like to do it, but you don't always need to on a smaller rock. You can get away with just light and shadow. Let's put a little bit of that warmth right in there. Look at how that changes that whole feeling of that. And then we'll cover some of this up with our grasses, of course, which will look great. Right in there. That's good. Excuse me. So you can see how that rock looks. Let's put some of this down. Now, we're just going to whisper in some of that color where we had it lighter. Okay, just to kind of match that. Now, that has to be a V, so it's got to go this way, David. It's got to go like that. Let's get, bring out just a touch more of this warmer color. A little bit more blue and burnt sienna. A little bit more burnt sienna. Let's get some of that. Get those colored. They don't have to be exact, but get them a little bit close. That helps you with the believability of it. Okay? And that's what you got to do, is fool the eye. Let's take some of this light. We'll hit the rock here. I don't have to be perfect at all on this rock, but we'll get some dark right in here and get some of that shadowy tone, and then rounding a little bit for the lighter tone, the smaller rock. Doesn't have to be perfect, it's all going to be blurry, just so we get some of it in there. Now, for the water's edge, we could take, you know, because we're not seeing sky and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to probably put some little rocks right along the water's edge. But I want to put a little shadow of it, which I had and then took out. A little shadow of the edge here. Maybe right out in here. Right like that. That's kind of neat. And I want to take some lighter yellow, which is our ground. Of course, we're going to have some of these blues and stuff and grays and stuff just lightly over the edge of it here. And of course, we're going to, I wanted to go further back. So let me rinse that out for a minute. I don't want the water to be a straight line, so I want to go further back here. Here. Okay. I try to avoid, you know, I'm a left brain. I'm a logical, analytical. It's one reason why I love to teach, because I'm very left brain. I'm not an artist. I'm a technician. And I can do that pretty easy, but I have problems sometimes with my left brain, making everything line up and perfect. Line it up like little soldiers and stuff. So I have some of those problems with that. But I want that water's edge to undulate just a bit. And I'll work. And now, you know, the thing is, you know, a lot of people say, well, water's blue. No, water is a reflection. Water is always a reflection. And when, you know, it's a angle of the sky, really. And so it is... you know, when you see the blue, it reflects the sky. But go over and put in, you know, search into Google and search some of the different types of reflections you see. Put in there water reflections, small lake, and you look and you'll see, you can see a little bit of what, water what really happens in water. And I got to go a little bit darker here, because this, especially in here, is my center of interest. And so I want to have a little bit every once in a while here of some darker, but I don't want it to be perfect. So I'm going to tap with my brush like this, right along this edge, and then pull some of that down so it's not a perfect little line, if that makes sense. Okay, so the line is just not perfect, okay? So I'll add some of that right out in here. That'll come right in here. A little bit of the shadow right there, okay? And so when you're looking at this, and what I did was, when I'm drawing something like this and I have no picture to look at for the reflection, what I do is I set my drawing up on a board, and then I set a mirror down here on the table, and I hold my board up to it, and then I can see the reflection in the mirror. Now, what makes it look more like the guy, or does this shorten up and you pick up a little sky, depends on what we call the eye line, where your eye line is going to be naturally looking at this. And since that eye line is right in here, then, and as it goes slightly lower to here, you're going to pick up more of this. As you go up, you're going to start to pick up more of this, of the sky and stuff, and you might see the sky in there. Now, the other thing that the artist has to do is you have to paint what you expect to see. So this is really what I see and I don't really see too much of the horse other than some blurry area, but you would expect to see a little bit of it. Does that make sense? Okay. So, so since we're not painting exactly, absolutely everything, you would expect to see a little bit of him. And so when I get back into here, what I'm going to do is not make a perfect reflection. I'm going to paint the color, if that makes sense. So I'm going to paint the color back out in here, but I'm not going to paint a perfect reflection, mirrored by any kind of sense. So that's just the white and a little bit, and you might pick up a little bit of the white over here. Does that make sense? And as it shimmers through and stuff, you might pick up a little bit of that right there. And up here, just to say we did it, we can take a little bit of our blue and our violet. And this is taking artistic license. Your job is to make something believable, and since we don't have a photo to work from, we're just going to add a little bit of some of the sky color right back here into the ground color here, just a bit of it right out here to say, yeah, you're picking up the colors, in other words, if that makes sense. We're picking up the colors through. So I start to look at that. But now this blue, okay, so where does the blue come from? The blue comes from the sky. So it should be pretty close in value and everything to your sky. Mine can be just a touch darker than that top up there. And again, this is a little bit of artistic license here because we're painting a harmonious, wonderful Western here and not an absolutely perfect thing here. So, but we want to do a nice reflection. Now, sometimes in through here, if there's a lot of wind or something like that, you'll get water and you'll get little ripples into the water, and the water rippling at different angles will hit and pick up and you'll get the sky. And that's why you might every once in a while, in any kind of painting like this, pick up a little bit of blue coming through, but not much. It all depends on how active, everything is. So you might pick up a little bit of it, or you might see a little bit, like a little line or a little wave or something like that. That's going to be up to you to, whether or not you do that. What I do like to do is just the same kind of thing that I do on seascapes and stuff. When I put that little water's edge, I like to take a little bit of this blue and the light, maybe a bit of this dirty color, and I don't like to make it absolutely perfect, but we like to roll down and put a little bit of this, just a touch of this light right up against the edge here and there. And to say, and it's going to help with that water's edge right there. Right in there, just a bit of that there. And again, you can pull down and blur that across, just a touch of it. And again, I'm not putting on a ton, just a small little mark. They're more like little shines more than anything else. They're little shines of what's happening in the painting. Let's take a bit of dark. That's a little heavy, so I'll just take some of that out there, just like that. But you will still have wind-blown shines, light shines. I might have a light shine through here, right up here, right up into that area that's going to pick up some of that water, some of the lightness of this water. Maybe a bit of that yellow right there that you see by him. Okay. And what does it more than anything else, though, guys, is this dark. So you don't want to lose your dark. You know, that dark just kind of sets the edge of where some of that water is. Okay, and we'll do some more. But what I want to do now is let's refine our reflection one more time, and we'll do it one more time after that when we we finish up the dog. So we have some room here to refine our reflection a bit more. And you notice I paint acrylic, so I can take this extender. I'm using my big brush and extender and just go right over everything right now because everything is dry. Let's go up just a bit here, okay? And we'll refine the reflection. Now, why I'm going to put this on is my next step is I want to blur a bit more. And to do this, I want to keep the colors wet here for just a bit. So I'm going to put on some extender. Now sometimes, like in the big mountain lake that I did lesson, I didn't do it for. I showed you some of it here on the channel. But what I do is, if I'm going to work in the area for a long time, is I put on some of this open medium. Now this keeps everything really wet for quite a long time. It will dry absolutely clear, but it keeps everything wet and gives me lots of time to refine some of my marks. So I'm going to come back in here and start to, and I don't, again, like I said the other day, don't have to be perfect with my colors or even my shape. I just have to put some colors on. Now this is going to stay wet, and I'll show you why in just a minute, okay, why we're doing this. But we'll take a little blue and this burnt sienna, that gray color of the rock here. We'll push some of that in. Let's go burnt sienna and this dark blue. Shadows are really important. Okay, so we have those shadows. Bit of the shadow that we see in there. Okay. And again, it's just restating some of these colors. Not perfectly. Remember, we got that and we blurred out a bit. So let's take just a bit of that extra medium off. That's quite a bit there. But we have this back leg, some of that shadow in there. And then we'll get a touch more blue into this. Maybe a touch of the red. Makes a really different kind of darker color here that we can use to emulate some of the dog here. And again, not perfect again, but just kind of tap him around here. And it puts him in a little bit of violet too. He's a little cooler, blue and violet here. But it gets him a little closer to what he is. Not perfect. Don't have to be perfect. That's the other thing. It's just, you don't have to be perfect. Just get close with it, right? And let's take some of this. We'll put some grays in. And you can always add a bit of this color into him as you're painting this, because we're not done with him yet. But just to make sure that you're hitting some of those areas, you know, that are real close in color. They don't have to be perfect, but they're real close, right? Okay. So, yeah, a bit of the mark here for his ears. And again, setting up the color, but not absolutely perfect. Let's get this yellow and warmth of the burnt sienna here, because he's got some of that on his chest. And touch of the lighter with a little bit of white here up on his leg. And if you get it too perfect, that's okay, because I'm about to blur it. So, you know, you don't, like I say, it doesn't have to be perfect. But if it happens, that's okay. Let's put a little bit on his face. And you see, it doesn't have to be a perfect face. Maybe a bit of the burnt sienna down here on his back, inside leg. Just, you're painting everything in reverse. And so... And again, I'm going to repeat this just one more time, but it's very important with this next step that I start some of this blur, and I'll show you. Let me just get a bit more of these colors right where he wants it. So he's very close. He's not perfect. He's very close. Let's get, and it's going to stay wet, so I don't have to worry. Let's get a little bit of the guy going here, just a touch. Get a bit of this blue here. And again, doesn't have to be perfect, just capture. You know, there's other lessons, and we put one on there that I did a pure, a couple of them actually, I did a pure reflection that was, you know, exact mirror. And they are kind of fun, but I like these kinds of reflections where they're a little, not quite as perfect, and they give you a better sense of it. In other words, it's just going to blur out here. So we'll just try to find some of the main colors. That's all. You just want to hit the main colors. And like I say, again and again, you can be off, okay? Just get some of the main colors in there, and you can be off. Let's put a touch of that light right in there, up onto his shirt. Now, I want to get just a mid-tone, some of that right in here. That's good. And that real beautiful mid-tone that we pushed. So that's coming that way, so it's going to go this way, right? Right in there. A bit more of the burnt sienna right in there. Just close. There we go. Maybe some deeper dark. That would be his foot and stuff right in here. Some of the shadows. The cast shadow that's right in there. Here we go. Now, okay, so there's a couple of ways that you create nice reflections. I'll put just a little dirty color in my knife here. One of them is you use your knife pulling across this way, and see how that starts to blur it out. In other words, it doesn't make the reflection, it slides the reflection side to side. Okay, so let me show you right in here. So you start to slide the reflection side to side slightly. So it's not perfect. And that gives you that whole feeling of water. Now you can do it also, I showed you, I did it with with my brush too. Pull down, pull aside. there's that way as well. But sometimes when you're getting towards the end, see, you do this, see how that slides right over that, and you get this in and out of the edge. And so what makes it even a little bit more like water is like if I take this light right here, okay, and if I pull across in and out right there like that, see how that blurs that edge, see, right through there like that. So like on the dog, let's take some light right up here, and then let's just blur right across that edge of that dog there, right like that, see? And it creates those little ripples. And so like right in here, let's take a little blue and some of this color, and so those ripples become kind of important. So like I can put some of this in, some of that light, right? Now let me come back with a little dark in my knife here as well, and ripple that edge, see? And so you see the guy, but you don't see it. Now, I can take and tap out if I'm a little bit too heavy. I can lightly pull down, see the lightly pull down after I blurred some of that, and see how wet everything is? So it stays really nice. It gets and you carry some of that color down in through there. But don't do it too many times. Just pull down lightly and see how that just elongates some of the lines. Take some of that dark, pull in this way, like that, and you get kind of a nice little reflection of that, and, of him down there. And that works really, really well. Now, there's other areas that, you can do this many, many times. Let me just say that. You can do this many, many times. Let's say, oh, I like it once, and I'll go back and do it again. Now, but the thing is about doing it again is you should let it dry up. And we used open medium, so this is going to be wet for quite a long time. I can come back in and add a little bit more color where I want, and then I just blur it across. Sometimes I do a two brush where I paint with one brush and blur with another brush. But sometimes I like this edge. I'll just take this edge and I'll specifically manipulate this edge here, so that you see that ripple in there. And it's a little bit of the ripple that creates the movement. Now, sometimes you have glass water and you don't have that. But this little bit of back and forth of this ripple is what gives you that really nice look of the reflection of the water, if that makes sense. Okay, so, but you don't want to produce the ripples and then all of a sudden produce perfect lines or shapes or something like that. Okay, you don't need those. So let's get this in here. Maybe a little bit more dark here and there. But see, and that just stays really wet, and it's really, really easy to manipulate there. Right? Let's put a bit more dark, and see, I can just do this. Ripple that out a bit, just, so you see in a good reflection, you go horizontal, you pull down to blur, but then, waves and stuff like that are going to ripple it side to side and bend some of this reflection this way. Does that make sense? That's what we're doing. So let's take a bit of the darker blue. Not quite as that dark, Dave, but a little white. Something right around here. That's real close to this other arm. Drop in a bit of that and so see, I paint side to side, and it does look like a reflection here. So I'll put that color in, and then I'll just blur it side to side. Or sometimes if I've got a lot of paint there, I take my knife and just blur it side to side there. Okay. Now you can come back in. Like I really like that light color on his knee. I'm not seeing it there completely. So, I'm close, but I'm not. I can be a little bit closer. So I just go back and add it, right? So I come right back where that knee is right there, and I add that lighter color, mostly going that way. Nice texture. And let's just whisper a little bit of that out here. But then what do I have to do? Pull and take some of it side to side. Does that make sense? There. Pull and take some of that side to side. That is what makes it. Let's put a touch more light on his arm. Let's get up to that lighter blue violet we like. So see, let's put some of that right on him. Maybe a bit over there. Some of it right on the point of his shoulder. Here, okay. Pinch wipe my brush here, take most of this off, and just take it wipe your brush, take it side to side a bit. Boom, just like that. Boom. Here. So you see that sideways movement in there. Now I can, right in here, I feel I could have that extra little bit of light or a little more interest into it. And again, see, it doesn't have to be perfect. I could just emulate that in there and then wipe my brush and blur it side to side. You can pull down, which gives it its stillness, but then you blur it side to side there. Just like that, and that works really, really well. And, you know, how much time I spend on it, all depends on the painting and how much time I want to work with it and stuff. But, yeah, and I'll work some of these colors in there that are right into this area. And again, you know, you got to blur some of this by pulling it down. Press and pull down slightly, okay? And that, it's basically, your water is a distortion. Does that make sense? It's a distortion of some of the stuff that you see here. And so we'll increase a bit of light right in here. And of course the dogs, you know, we've got to work on our dog, got to look a bit more. But see how that just reflects in, you know, into him. And I'll reflect maybe a bit more light here for the horse. I don't need to do a lot because we're painting the horse for color. Does that make sense? In other words, I'm not going to do a perfect shape of the horse. It's color. So I'm just going to blur out some of that light that we have here of that horse, and that's all back there. I could put a little bit more in there, but it's kind of senseless to do a lot of it right now until you get your grasses in. Does that make sense? And what do you do with your grasses? You put it on, put a little bit in here, and then blur it slightly side to side. That's what does it. Sometimes I take my finger, because the finger does it, like I'll drag the light right in over the edge of the little dog there. See how that creates that blur, right? Sometimes you know, your finger works really well to do some of this as well, if you get enough paint. The whole secret to all of this is get enough paint. You got to get paint on the surface. Once paint is on the surface, use a bit of that open medium or something to keep it wet for a bit so you can manipulate and work that blurry line. Let's go back and set this in just a touch more. So see, I can come in and actually shape up a bit more, but I do want to leave some of this blurring across. See, just doom, you know, just doom. Maybe a touch of that dark right up underneath there, and for where his foot is going to be, his boot. And again, you know, you can always flatten my brush out here a bit. I flatten my brush out by tapping it on my hand. That makes it nice and flat. And just lightly pull down and blur that slightly. That works. Tap a bit of darks in. So if you get too much of the lights there, you can just tap through. And see, leave that. See, then you just take some of the darks like this and just tap through some of that, and you make the water even more believable as you get highs and lows in those reflections. Highs and lows of lights and darks and stuff in those reflections here. But that works really, really well. So I can define this rock up maybe a touch more. But it's hard to know. I mean, seriously, it's hard to know now how much you're going to do until we finish off some of these areas. But this is how I'm going to do it. Let me just put a bit more of this darker color right in there. And maybe some of that burnt sienna right in there. And just get close, right? Just get close with those. Now, so I want to come in and so you get an idea, see? And that's the most important thing is that, and it's this side to side. So if I really want to make a nice blur, like watch this, and I'll do more of this towards the end, but I'll show you guys now, just in case I forget, okay, I'll take this light that I know is right here. See, it's on my brush. Take that light and I'll just pull across just a bit in a few areas here and establish that blurry line. So in other words, you don't have a straight line for the guy for any of these things. You have a blurry line. You know, it goes back and forth like this, and that's what creates because that creates the movement into the water. Does that make sense? And then you can take some of that light and tap it right through here. Now, if I had a lot of sky, I would tap some of that sky in through there as well. And because little ripples will pick up the angle of that sky and stuff. So, but in looking at this, I could have a touch more dark. Okay. A touch more dark. Right up in here onto the dog, maybe blur it a bit, touch more in here, just to get him a touch closer to where he is, value-wise, okay, value-wise. A little bit onto his ear, but all of that has to stay blurry. There's his legs. See, that's pretty good for, you know, where he is, where some of that is. You could refine it up even more, and I've showed you in other videos. You refine that up even more. We have a cast shadow. We can't forget to. So that cast shadow would reflect as well. So let's just add a touch of it. Keeps everything believable. But the angle, sometimes it's really hard to know when you're creating a design like this, at what angle you see that. And there's a formula you could use, and I don't use that. But what I do is I just get an idea with a mirror, shining my design into a mirror, looking at where my eye line is going to be. And my eye line, you know, is right here, so it's almost an equal reflection. But if you go up and down, so does this. It goes up and down. So I'm going to fudge it here and put a little blue in and leave some of this, and not do a perfect reflection of anything back here. You could put a little mountain color or something back there, you know. Again, just to break up that color. All of that is not absolutely important in you know, this particular painting, but you know, so I could put in some mountain color back here, you know, a little bit of the violet, and then I want to go paint the dog with it before I run out of time. So you can see just a bit of the mountain color back there. And again, just the big thing is blur it, right? Pull through and blur those colors. Leave a little movement, a little side to side there, and just blur some of those colors, and that'll be enough. We'll leave some of the sky, just a bit of that sky. Let's go back in now And let's work on things like our dog again. And maybe I'll come in a little closer here. We'll go in a little closer. Work on the dog here. And then if we have time here, the face as well. So we'll come right about in there. Okay. And all right, let's go let's get our burnt siennas and our blues out here and our violets here. Violets and greens are also really nice dark colors. All of these work really nice here on this dog. I'm going to use a small filbert here, and I'm going to restate some of my real darks on him where I know I'm looking at the photo or a photo reference that you have, and I have a little cattle dog photo reference. Any dog that you're going to paint, look through the darks. Let's restate some of the darks. And you can come back and just add a touch or two of that color into your reflection as well. And again, blur some of it side to side, right? But let's put some of that in. Restate some of that. And there. Boy, it's the second time coming through here or adding some of these things. Little marks of it. It's a heck of a lot easier now that there's more paint on the surface. You know, you get paint on the surface, and especially on the canvases, it's a lot easier to paint. It's one reason why, you know, I use boards a lot, because boards become easier to paint right away because the surface is more smooth. Where canvases take a little more work at manipulating the colors on the surface and filling in the weave a bit. Let's just add a little bit shadow here down by his paws. Okay. Touch of the gray, and you could add some open medium to this, which would be great because it'll stay wet and give you some time to manipulate the edges. Let's go into some lighter blue violets, which is the color I see on him. Here, blue violets, lighter color. Okay, and I'm just gonna drag some of this. I know I'm going to be heavy, but I'll come back and just drag some of this over. Push and pull in an area that's a little more solid on him. Okay? And that's going to break him up. Break up some of that color. And if you use, so you saw me use the flat of the brush. If I use the tip of the brush, I put it in more solid. Does that make sense? And so I don't always like that. So let me just add, and so you do this. You can come back and take out, like I showed you earlier, take out with the light, or excuse me, with the dark. So let's add a little bit here of the dark, or excuse me, the light, and then we'll paint, tapping out the dark there, okay. And little marks, and you've got to decide here. Let's get a little bit grayer. You've got to decide here how much you want to put on and take off. In other words, you know, how accurate are you going to be with these, or do you paint it? One of the things I noticed, or do you paint it more solid little areas or marks of color? And let the viewer kind of brindle him or model him up. So here I'll go a little heavier, and then I'll paint out what I don't want. And that's the kind of look I like the best on, like the dogs and stuff. I like to put on too much, maybe use some of that to shape a bit, like there, the shoulder, and then paint out. And you'll notice this time it'll paint out really easy because, you know, we've done this already. So Let's get some of this dark right up here. Another pretty little color. Let's get that lighter, yellower, little red, little yellow here. And some white. And put in the lighter color. There. That's pretty nice. Bit of the burnt sienna. Oops, touch some blue. It's a pretty color, but let's get a little bit of the burnt sienna right along that edge. And so I'll manipulate this back and forth with some light. There. Pull this through. Boom. There we go. Let's get the upper mouth here again. We'll put on some paint. Get some paint in there. And it's the paint that makes his face pop out, right? Then just tap in. Tip of the brush. I like the little filbert because it has a very nice point, or I can use it onto the flat to do something a little softer. And let's give him a little more color into his nose. Just the point of the brush here. That's all I'm using. There we go. Just like that. Very impressionistic. He has a real light color down his face and down his nose. So I have the little reference photo. I'll try to remember to put that into the membership. Okay. Yeah, the one that I'm using here, I have found a little cattle dog, and I really liked his colors here, so that's who I'm painting. But you can put any little dog in there that you want. Maybe you have a favorite kind. And I want to keep some of these marks, you know, like real light and simplistic and just marks. And then I'll soften these out a bit. Tap that in. There we go. And, you know, on maybe a bit of an edge right there. Little touch of a warm color, maybe a light, a tiny little catch light, but just a little touch there. For his eye, he doesn't get much, as you know, because you can't really see his eye. It's just kind of a dark area there. And there we go. See, that looks pretty good. That's really kind of developing him nicely. But you can pull some of that, wherever you see that light, down. Brindle him up a bit. It's kind of fun. So, but if you put in, you know, cattle dogs, you know, into the Google search, you'll find all kinds of them. And so you can paint a nice little dog. Simplistic. Keep your marks very simplistic. And see, I like, just like the rocks, I like to come back and draw with the dark, because it, you know, so it's kind of like you can lighten them all up and then come back and just darken him here with some of your shadows. Get some of those nice light colors and then put in some shadows to soften. That works pretty well on him. Let's, so like an area in here, see, I'll go too heavy here, show you. See, so you can put it on pretty heavy there now that we got all that other color under there. And then come back, kind of paint his shape, taking, and see it takes out some of that. So I did it first with this real kind of burnt sienna dark, and then maybe I'll go a little bit of the red and blue and get it a little heavier with the blue and the violet here. Even a little darker yet to set some of the tone here up the shadow part and down in there. And so you'll see you know, it just breaks up those colors. It works really nice. Let's get just a touch of the light up on his edge, because I see that. I painted a couple of other ones that slightly different coloring. I just like this one with that. So see, I'll go a little heavy there. It's a little heavy, and then I'll just take some of it out into his shape, see? And so I'm just, so you can pick out like light areas. So for example, he'll have one, a nice little light area. Let's look at that again, right back down in here. Too much, and now you see it gets easier and easier as I get more and more paint on him. Does that make sense? And you can tap into, you know, into the open medium, add that, and everything will stay wet for a while. But now I'll take this and I'll paint more of the mark here through. See, I'm changing the position of my brush, so it's not always painting the same, right? And let's take a little heavier mark. Take some of that out. There we go. So I'll get some of the light and dark that you see on him. Here, a little bit on this shoulder. So you can use that type of technique to set up his shape. Like, so there's the shoulder. We can bring that shoulder down. Then a little bit more blue for the shadow right up underneath that. So you can bring that shoulder up with a little bit of blue and violet here. Maybe a bit of that red. Blue, violet, darker color right here. See, that'll make the shadow and pick out that shoulder, see? Just like that. So, yeah, that works pretty good. Let's get a little bit more light over onto his chest here, because I want that to come forward. So let's go a little lighter, a little warmer. So let's add a little more yellows and stuff to that. Let's warm that up a bit. It's a little different than my sample, but I want it. So, especially as they come towards the end, I start painting what I want to see, not always what I see. So I want that lighter, and then right up next to it, I want to drag this dark down into it just a bit to set that. See, I like that. I like that kind of, got enough paint there dragging down into that. I think what I'll do is reset this light up on his top up here on the head again, especially as I got so much paint up there now. And then reset the dark right there. Maybe a bit more dark right over here. Boom. Right there. That looks, see how he's just coming to life. Now, in the one sample that I had here, he has a light pink tongue. And I usually don't do that, but I think I will give it a try. Let's go with just a real simplistic pink, which is the Naphthol Red Light, which is warm, some white, and I had just a touch of yellow into that. And let's just give him a little one right there. And you see, the camera probably picks that up real white, but it's just a little tip of the white there. There we go. Just a bit of that. I like that. That's pretty good. I know it's really small, and you probably go, where did you do that, Dave? But trust me, it's amazing. It's just a little bit. Let me take a bit of this dark right up there by the opening of his mouth. That works. And some burnt sienna, dark shadow here. Just a bit of that shot. Now you see he's really starting to come. I'm going to take out just a touch of that light right there. Get his eye back in there a bit more. So, yeah, see, building that up. And so right up here up the front, I'm going to take this burnt sienna and the light, and I'm going to reset some of this light that's right up here onto the front of his haunch there. His knee area, and some burnt sienna and yellow. So I got too much of it there, so I'll paint just taps some of it back out, right like that. But see, it really advances him there, right? Let's take a lighter bluish gray and paint some of that rounding down just a bit. But we pick up just a touch of that gray, bluish gray here, right up here. Boom, there it is. Okay, and then we'll go into green and blue and red, some nice dark right here. Maybe a bit more red and burnt sienna into that, so it's not quite so cold, not yet. Pull that down here. See? Yeah, that looks pretty good. And we could, and I like that, just kind of dribbling off there. Let's take a bit of that light, redefine his light part of his leg right there. And you can use it to draw edges and stuff, and I don't want to get, like I say, too perfect with the edges here, but just like that, that's not so bad. I love that color. So let's move some of that right up here, right up into his mouth, or up onto his chest, or his face there. A little more yellow into that. Right out, a little mark. Maybe by the edge, a little bit of the black and the burnt sienna. Changes a bit. That's pretty nice. And I got this. I wanna bring that down. You know, I have it slightly off. It's coming this way. The point of his chest is coming down. So I want to reset that. It's those little things, you know, and I start to notice it. I've been painting this, I haven't noticed it. I want to bring this light down by his chest there. See, that's a better light. Now, it doesn't go all the way down there. It shortens out, but I want to bring that right in there. And a little bit of light, a little yellow, slightly different color. Let's just break that up a bit. There, that's good. Yeah, that's maybe a mark of it right here that'll swing. And see if I leave a bit of that ruffled edge. That just, it's a small thing, it's a little thing, but now we're starting to head into some of that. Let's bring some of this color again. We did it earlier. I need to reset it. Right across his chest here. Bit of that. Maybe a touch of that burnt sienna in there. There. There we go. Yeah, that's a good little look on him. I'll do a little more refining on him, maybe a slightly smaller brush, but yeah, just I want to hit that light one more. It's a little too smooth, so I want a little more paint and to hit that. That's better. That's might be too bright, too light, but we'll see. Maybe a touch of that light. Just drag over the edges now, some of this. In other words, remember I told you, crossing over, right? Colors and stuff crossing over. Paint one way, paint the other way. Put this elbow on there, and then paint some of it back. Just like that. Paint some of it back. Here we go. Paint some of it back. Got a squeaky chair. I've had it for the last couple videos, a little squeaky chair. I gotta keep forgetting when I turn on the camera. It's got a squeaky chair. Oil it. bit more of the yellow for Sienna. Let's put that in. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so a bit more dark. There we go. Boy, he looks pretty good. And you see now, he pops off, especially like right in that area there. He pops off about the same as the guy does. I'm going to put a little more reddish tone into this fun little tongue there. There we go. And that's a lot of little detail. He's little in that. But, you know, he pops off about the same. So it works. I'm just going to add a bit of this light right in there. There. I like that, you know, he has that swirling lighter chest right there. I like that. Little red in that too. That's good. See, I like that. That works out pretty nice. Let's get just a bit of dark back here to help set some of that area back. He's sitting, you know, on his little haunches back there. So this other leg crosses right there in front, or right there by the side there. Let's get a little more shape right in here into his legs. Bring those forward. Right up on this one as well. So put on some light, then load your brush back up with the dark and drag back down and set that in. There, like that. That works pretty nice. And we'll put, we won't worry about getting too precise perfect there on his paws, because we'll put a lot of grasses and stuff up in there. So we'll leave some of those lost edges. Does that make sense? Okay, so now we'll come into something a little fun here, and, well, it's all fun, huh? And let me see if I brought in, this is my little number 2, it's a little number 2 filbert. And I do very simplistic faces. And I had a good comment, you know, one lady say, I'm a beginner, I'm afraid to do faces, so can you turn their hat and stuff so it covers their face? Faces, there's all kinds. Now, I have portraits. You've seen me on this channel paint a lot of portraits and stuff. And I didn't understand the simplistic paintings until I started to do more portraits. I'm just going to put a little dark right in here. Starting to do the portraits. But, you know, faces, I mean, you can't always turn a cowboy hat and stuff and cover it up. You're going to have to learn how to do some simplistic faces. And a lot of the masters did very simplistic faces, okay? And I showed you in some of the other Westerns some very simplistic paintings by some of the masters. I put Bill Anton and stuff like that. But there was also larger paintings. They did a little more detail. But it's nothing to be afraid of. And so what you do is go over to your, you know, go into Google, put it into the catalog, like if you're going to look up on a catalog or something, and put in like Western wear, and then you'll see all kinds of guys, you know, put it for if you're painting a guy, put all kinds of guys in cowboy hats and Western wears, turning their heads and facing their heads in all different kinds of directions. And that's what I always tell my students. Grab some of those and then simplify it. You can even take it into Photoshop and stuff and simplify it. But that gives you a good idea how to change and turn something. So we're going to start with this little number 2, and we're going to give him some hair there into the back of his head. Okay, blue, burnt sienna and blue. We'll give him a little mark on either down for like a sideburn, and you know, it's just a quick little mark. You can have the darker color there that is, you know, maybe a little line of his hair, something there. Now, let's take some of this. Let's thin this way out. A little bit of our burnt sienna and white in that too. We're going to make a dark, kind of a grayish flesh because he's in the shadow. And we're just going to come down the side of his face here. And what we're going to paint here first is light and shadow. Does that make sense? Okay. Light and shadow. And I show you all different kinds of ways in each Western to do something a little different. This is a very simplistic way here. A little bit of burnt sienna here. Where do you see light and shadow on him? And I want to change the angle of that nose a bit. I just came off a touch. I got too much water in my brush, so I'll pinch wipe this. A little yellow, a little light, maybe a bit of the gray. So it's not completely light. Let's come right, yeah, it's pretty good color. Right up in there. I leave a bit of a soft line there where his eye socket kind of thing is, right in there. And so let's leave that. That darker. I don't always come back with the same color. Now, see, it bends in just a little bit. I don't want that. I want it to come kind of straight down. There we go. That's better. And then book out here for his nose without it getting too big of a nose and too perfect or too pointed. It's just a touch too pointed. And so I'll work back and forth. Here's a bit of my yellow. I'll soften that just a bit. Okay. And we'll come down and round his jaw here, just like that. So now what I have is the light and the shadow. Now I'm going to come also with this shadow down the back side of his, and leave almost his jawline. His jawline is painted with light and shadow. Does that make sense? Okay. Now let's take a bit of burnt sienna and white here. Now we're going to go with the light. Okay. Burnt sienna and white, but still a little bit darker because he's kind of in the shadows here a bit. A touch right up here to the front of like the ear, just to say we hit the front of his ear. Okay, that's just a touch light, so maybe a little bit more burnt sienna. And then we'll come in here and we'll imagine his cheek. Pull down the side of his face a bit. Lift the pressure on your brush so you don't put in too much color. We'll soften that cheek right up as we paint up towards his eye. Okay. And then we can lighten, take a little of that light. Sometimes I'll put in a little bit of red because we know cheeks, nose areas and stuff get a little bit more ruddy, a little bit more red. And so you can push in a little bit of that there into that cheek area. That's there. But we want to, I've got that a little high, so I'm going to take some of my shadow and just pull down slightly through it just to soften that, right? And when it comes to the eyes and areas, we're not going to do a whole lot of detail. I'm just going to take a real softer, I'm looking for my, there it is, my maul stick. Okay, this is what we call maul stick that you hold it there. It helps my hand steady. And I'm just going to take a little burnt sienna, a tiny bit of blue right in here. Right in this area, back of ways just a touch, and I want to put in the idea of an eye. Not a perfect round or anything like that. The idea of an eye here. And that's a little too perfect. Just blur it off a bit, right? And you can use this to set up a little shadow there for idea of his mouth, maybe a little line underneath his nose or whatever, okay? And then I'll start to, now, so that this tells me where his facial features are going to be, and so I can start to define them a little bit more. You know, like maybe I want to put in a touch of dark right in like the center of the ear. I want to redo I step way back on the brush, put in a softer line for the jawline. And like I said before, I paint back and forth. So I'm going to take some of this light, go right through that area there. The front of the face, though, stays very much in shadow, if that makes sense. Okay, so, and I'll restate that shadow a couple times of this pulling by. There. That works. Nice little, sometimes I'll to get that. In a portrait, we make many different tones. Does that make sense? Now, this tone is mainly based off of a burnt sienna that I'm working here. But I can use different amounts of the burnt sienna and the blue and the white to create the different shadows and stuff. And maybe I add just a touch of white and a touch of red just to lighten that. And we know up this cheek and down this side right up through here. So that cheek is a little lighter. Okay, we know that happens, right? But maybe that's a little too light. So just a touch of burnt sienna, slightly. Little pressure on your brush. This is a little fusion filbert, so it's very soft. And I'll just lightly tap some of that right back into that side there, or that part of his face. And we know that the front part of the ear, the round part of the ear, might get some of that as well. Tapping some of that through, build that a bit more. And what I do now is I come through with light and shadow again, which starts to soften him out here, and drag over those edges that you want to drag here, and very simplistic. He stays very, very simplistic. A slightly different, a little more burnt sienna, a little red, maybe a touch or two right along that front edge of his face there, right? His mouth, that I just did a very suggestion of it, is a little bit too low towards the chin, so I want it up in here. Right up, yeah, that's much better. And see, it's just kind of like the point of the number 2 and a whisper, and it does that. But, so we'll push that up, right up in there. Boom. A little bit into that eye socket again. There. Yeah. And the smallest little mark makes a difference. Now, here's the thing, okay, about little faces like this. Here's the thing. And some days they work really great. Some days they don't. And until you study like simplistic lines in portraiture, it's hard. We tend to make our lines too perfect. And a face, when I studied with my master, and he always told me, when you start to do these faces, you're going to have to play with them a little bit. But when you're playing with it, don't use much paint and never develop a little edge. So see, I can come back in on him and I can work a softer, lighter little, maybe just a touch more pink. Maybe I make it a little bit more glowy by red with a little bit of that Diarylide and a little bit of the white. And then I take the tiniest little bit of that and I whisper into that. Yeah, see, you pick up just that tiny little bit more of a pink right there, that comes in right on that cheek line right there. So you pick that up a bit more. And, Sargent, the portrait painter and stuff, always says you hit the ears, you hit that with it. But I can take that over to my burnt sienna and white, make a slightly more ruddy, light flesh, and give just a whisper of a jawline, here. Pull that down just a touch there. And but most of that whole front of his face kept very simplistic by painting it light and shadow. And the shadow, I just mix up some of this dark like this. And, let me say this. I sometimes will repeat it. So I'll just lightly come in here and drag that over to soften that. Yeah, see? And when you're softening those features, if you don't do anything perfect and you soften those features, the person will come more to life because the viewer will be able to see them the way they want to see them. Does that make sense? And so we don't, in other words, I don't want to come in here and make a perfect little eye inside that socket like I just did. You want to soften it just a bit. So I'll just drag through that ever so. Soften that down there. And put in just the hint of it. There. Like that. You know, so. And so it keeps it very, very soft. Now, I probably, let me just, I want to put a bit more shadow, little things, a bit more shadow, like right down, and this hairline right there, down like that. And I may want to, change that flesh tone up here. It's a little too ruddy. So I just come over with a lighter color. And you can tap in towards the eyes to soften some of that as well. But keep him very, very simplistic. But, yeah, and, the thing is, about him, a couple of things. First off, like right in here, I could raise that nose up just a little bit here. And these are things I start to see. Now I'm thinking, okay, what do I have to do to finish? And maybe this nose line goes just a touch higher. Right in there. Yeah, that's better. And so that, and I'll take that light color that's out here by his face and stuff here. Let's just push that in just a bit. Yeah, that's so, but the edge of his face should hit the edge of his hat. You know how many times I painted that? It didn't do that. But the edge of the face should hit the edge of his hat. And so I come down and I make sure that those areas are going to line up. And that's going to work there okay. And yeah. And I'll just start tapping around little bits of light that came in. That shadow on that front that I just did is a little dark. So I'll just lighten it up. And then I'll just tap through a few times. Yeah, that's better. I'll tap through a few times. Like if you feel the sockets are a little big, they are on that one. If you're getting larger face, a lot of times you have a highlight, which you can see right here in the bags of my eyes here. You have a highlight right down through there. So you could hit a little bit of a light right up underneath that right there and pull down. And that works as well. You can pull the shadow down the side of the nose, which, down into his face. That works. There's a lot of soft little things that you do. But the big thing is, don't make his facial features here too dark. You don't want him to be too dark, okay? So I'll do that. Now, his hands will go the same way. His hands will come in with burnt sienna and white. And here we'll work these burnt sienna and white. Very simplistic here. A little sketchy. I've used, especially like this little two. It's fantastic because I can just kind of, scumble over it a bit. Take a bit of the burnt sienna and blue, slightly darker. You can give some ideas here for his fingers and stuff here. Across the shadow plane here, down underneath a bit. Use this to shapen up his hands here. Let's just shapen that up a bit. It's got kind of a bad thing here. Takes a little bit of work. Push that out a little bit more. Bend the fingers down here. there, and boom, little side plane, little thumb here, so a little shadow and light, and then, you know, how much shadow and light are you going to do? And here a little bit of that red and blue is really kind of neat as well. But you can give some marks for individual fingers or whatever. This guy is really small, so I usually don't do too much of that, but I will just give the idea of light and shade on it. And I'll reset some of this light blue and violet here for this shirt. Boy, this is a really small brush now. Here, let's go really light here. And I can start working the edge here. Here we go. Break that edge. I got that into the background there. Not so hot. And let's take that back right here. That little blue out. But, you know, one of the things that my teacher always told me, too, is, you know, you get this smaller brush and you start sketching with it. So you know you're going to have a shadow that comes right down here from underneath that shirt edge. And so you start to basically draw with it, sketch with it here. Let's small down his hand a bit. Okay. And start working some of the light across here. Here we go. Like that. And a little bit of shadow. You can give him individual fingers and put a thumb or whatever in there, or you can keep it cedar. You can keep it just very simplistic. Everything stays simplistic. The fun thing is, too, let's just draw some of that right there. And the fun thing with all this is you can take some of these colors and go back and revisit his face, too. You know, once you start to see, okay, maybe I want to do this, and maybe his thumb comes out here. Paint back and forth. Well, extended his middle finger there. That doesn't look so great. Should be the shorten that out. But you can start now that you're working on those. You can, you know, put on. It's how much detail you want, and it's how big your design is. So I can put on some shadow right there, a little bit more of a light, like a flesh tone, right down his hand here, like that. A couple of fingers there. Yeah, and I might put some more details on there. I'll come back in. I want to revisit that face just one more time. His nose is flattened out a bit on that. Now that it's dry, see that flattened out. And that's the nice thing is, see, I'm using a small brush and a little bit of paint. Let's take just a bit of this gray here. A little bit of paint here. And so I can, you know, come in real small. Here we go. That's better. There we go. Just like that. That's better. And then just scumble it out. And then we'll put grasses and stuff all up here, and it'll make it look all like you know what you're doing, but that'll bring him out. And then let him dry down, because what's going to happen is the colors are going to dry darker, right? Colors are going to dry darker, then you can go back in. Now, the one thing that's important about when you're doing that little face, see, the value difference here is only a couple. So when you look at a really simplistic face, you know, sometimes you have light and shade. And, or, you know, a really great one is the old original Perry Masons, and you see him standing there, and then it morphs into light and shade. And you can see how easy it is, how simplistic features can be, light and shade. But, you know, I have him very, very soft. And so I want him, he's going to be in shade. His hands here need to go lighter yet, because especially this hand. Why? Because it's in the light. Does that make sense? So I'll go back and I'll revisit some of this, and I'm going to lighten this up even more right in there, being not, I mean, I'll use what I have, so I'm not going to be absolutely, you know, perfect with it and not cover up everything I've already done. Does that make sense? So I'll put in more light, but it dries, and so especially with flesh tones, they dry a lot darker than you think. And so you usually have to come back a couple times until you get exactly the tone that you're looking for. Does that make sense? So that's what you do. So I don't mind revisiting stuff. That's just being part of the arts. That's just what we do, you know, as the artist. That's what we do. We revisit. So I'll have to revisit some of this stuff, and I don't mind that at all. So I'll revisit just a bit, and you know, it all depends on how much light and shade that you want to give to your guy. Is going to bring in, that's a little too light, but it's going to dry down. Does that make sense? So I'll play around with that just a bit and refine that, and I'll show you. He's looking pretty good. I might want to come down into the bottom of the reflection, put some of that white in there. Is it necessary? No, not absolutely, not yet. And I got a little bit more of a straight line here again, so I'm going to have to change that. I might just put some pebbles and rocks and stuff in there. But we'll do that into the next one. We've an hour and 46 minutes here, so we're into that. We'll finish that up. And so I think just one more, and in the next one, I'll just show some clips of me adding the grasses. I've done that so many times in the Westerns. I'll add some cows back here, some grasses. We'll come back in and refine and finish up some of our colors. We'll add some of the beautiful details to the saddle and the stirrups there, and the reins and stuff. So we'll do that on the next one. Okay, so another one tomorrow. Okay, thanks very much, guys. See you on the next one.